Welcome to the UPCA podcast, a podcast where we will be speaking with national leaders within the United Pentecostal Church of Australia to gain insight about what God is doing across Australia and the world. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today, Brother Morris.
Thank you, Brother Hackathon.
It's good to have you on and to talk to you about Australian Home Missions. You're the Director of the Australian Home Missions Department for the United Pentecostal Church of Australia. Would you mind just introducing yourself and your team?
Sure, yeah. I'm Bill Morris. I'm a minister of United Pentecostal Church, have been so for about, I think, 16 years now. And I'm pastor of Faith Point Church, and I was elected to the role of Home Missions Director by the body of UPCA ministers in 2016. So it's just over about 6.5 years now. And I'm supported by a team who's made up of Pastor Jacob Caltabiano from the Gold Coast, and Reverend Sam Renema from Pentecostal of Sydney, and also Reverend Brad Graham from my own church, Faith Point. They're the three voting members. There's also support members. Sister Ruth Drew from Canberra Church is our treasurer, and also Sister Taylor Morris from POS is a media support officer. Yeah, great team.
Awesome. Yeah, it is a good team. So what is the mission of the Home Missions Department at the UPCA?
Yeah, that's actually set down in the UPCA bylaws. And if I just may read from it, I've actually modified it a little bit to make this kind of like long. The mission is to carry the gospel to neglected and unevangelized areas of Australia, to help establish self-supporting, self-governing and self-propagating churches within Australia. That's the mission. Basically, it's go take the gospel to unevangelized areas of Australia.
Mm. And so what are some home missions churches that are in Australia? Where do we currently have some home missions works and some daughter works in Australia?
Yeah. There are actually quite a number of established churches now that were home missions churches, like the Gold Coast, Ballarat, Nhulunbuy. There are quite a few, but currently there's not as many as you might think. We have Griffith in Western New South Wales. That's Pastor Martin and Sister Mabel Lee. I visited them in May. There's the Sunraysia Church, which is it's sort of southwest New South Wales and northwest Victoria. They actually meet in Robinvale in Victoria. I visited them last weekend. That's Pastor Wane and Sister Tima Vicoso. There's Bendigo, which is also Victoria, with Pastor Bong and Sister Patricia Abud. They're the three home missions churches. We also have home missionaries in a couple of areas. We have in Nirrupi, which is right, if you put a dot right in the centre of Australia, in the Tanami Desert, that's where Sister Salata Saru is, Reverend Saru. She's a licensed minister. She is there to support Pastor Micah Hudson, who's the local Indigenous Warlpiri pastor. She's been there for about 6 years. And in Warri or Yulamu or Mount Allen, depending on who you ask what the name is, we have a Fijian missionary there that we support, Reverend Nakune. He's been there for about 3 years now. So that's the entire list of churches. Not as big as some people might think, actually.
But you, I believe Home Missions also supports or helps support daughter works and preaching points.
I'll talk about the programs that we have, and we do support daughter works with a couple of programs, and I'd like to talk about them when I want to look at this document which I send out to pastors just briefly when we get down the track a bit.
Yeah, feel free to dig into that. So what are some of the programs that Australian Home Missions has to offer?
Sure. I'm only going to look at this in case I forget something along the way.
No, feel free.
So the Ignite program is to help churches set up daughter works. So we might assist with travel costs. We might assist with equipment. So the purpose is to assist and encourages churches to plant preaching points and daughter works. Now, we used to have like target cities, but after 20 years, there were very few target cities which were actually had established churches. But what I've noticed is that churches naturally, I think, use a buzzword, organically, they plant daughter works, and that's the way I think that we should grow the church in Australia. There's the Invigorate program with a capital G-O, go, in the middle of that, Invigorate, which is to assist small and remote churches and daughter works to grow through outreach, preaching, repairs and maintenance, encouragement, to train leaders and newly appointed ministers. So we will pay for either all or half costs for people or teams to go to various locations to assist. Where, for instance, Port Lincoln, we like to send people there because it's a smaller church that needs assistance. There's the Evangelist Program, which of course you know all about because you're one of our homegrown Australian evangelists. And there's, I think, 10 altogether, people from various churches that we send out. And I think you've been out a couple of times this year already to churches. We pretty much, we pay for our travel costs, and the local church should provide accommodation for the evangelist by way of hotel or motel or whatever, or even in someone's home. So that's been, I think, a very successful program, just connecting the churches together. There's the Elisha Project. I thought about this one, Elisha as a helper to Elijah. And so not a lot of people have taken this one up, but I would try to encourage senior ministers to take a young person with them, not necessarily a minister, but a young developing leader, so that they can see what happens in the field. And recently, Brother Caltabiano took with him a young man to the National Men's Camp. So that's the sort of thing that's designed to provide assistance with. The other program, which is probably a major spend, is the First Church Owners Grant. So if a church is established, we've got a couple of churches who have put a bid in for this now, we can provide up to $250,000 to a registered UPCA church. I say that very carefully because a lot of people ask me for assistance, but they're not entitled because don't associate with the UPCA. So up to $250,000, which is a huge boost to a smaller church trying to purchase a building or land. It's only for that. But that's the programs that we currently run. Yeah.
Yeah, that's massive. That First Church Homeowners Grant, that really gives the church a boost and helps them secure a loan.
Yeah. The other program that I forgot to mention is the Overseas Evangelist Program as well. So to supplement the local, it would seem it's good to have local evangelists, but sometimes when someone comes from overseas, people have more of an expectation that something exciting is going to happen. And that happens indeed with our local evangelists when they go, a pastor can preach and preach and preach, and an evangelist comes in, preaches the same message, and things happen that didn't happen because someone else is speaking. So we've got Brother Tavita Awate. He should be arriving today, the 8th of September, to travel around some of our churches in Australia. And next year we've got Brother and Sister Dylan Morgan coming from Florida and Sister Natalie Johnson coming from Louisiana to minister around our churches. So that's the Overseas Evangelist Program. Home Missions pays for pretty much all of that, travel and so forth. Churches pay for the accommodation, and hopefully they also support Home Missions because it's actually quite an expensive program to put in place.
So they would give an offering into Home Missions if they had one of the speakers helpful at the church. Yep. So what are some ways that they can gain access to some of these programs? All these programs are great, but how is it that they can go about, say, getting a local evangelist, overseas evangelist to the church, or get involved in an Invigorate team, or have the Elisha program?
Sure. Well, they should.
How would they go about doing that?
Yeah, they should contact me via email or phone me, and you might want to put my name, my number, I should say, and email address up there somewhere, or it's easy to find. And but for the evangelist program, the local evangelist program, a pastor should contact me to see if it's okay for them to go ahead. Then the next step is to contact, in your case, it would be Pastor Harvey, to see if you're available for a particular weekend. And then the person goes ahead and someone goes ahead, it's not me, goes ahead and books the accommodation and airfares, and then we can arrange reimbursement of those costs, or part of it at least. Same with any the other programs too. They should just contact me and see. We might need to get Home Missions Board approval for some projects or whatever. Speaking of projects, actually, recently in January, we amended the bylaws just slightly so that I could invest funds into other areas. For instance, for the Alice Springs Church, they had a kind of a tired building. I'm not sure if you've been there, but the furniture was getting old and it needed painted and new carpet. And so they put a bid in for X number of dollars to upgrade, and we didn't provide all those funds, but we gave them a significant boost because it's a remote area, it's a smaller church, but when people come into a church, I think first impressions are important. When they see something that's old and run down, they think, what's going on here? But if there's new paint, new furniture, it creates a much better environment for people, because people are not always looking for doctrine, they're looking for comfort. So it's one way to support smaller and more remote churches as well.
That's wonderful. So what are some future plans that Home Missions has, future casting? What is your vision? What are some plans that you have?
Yeah, actually, when you sent me that question, I looked at a map of Australia, actually, and I suddenly realised we, with the passing of Pastor Hayden in Tasmania, we have we have a few people down there, but we have no significant works down there. There's no church down there. So I'd like to see a church established in Tasmania. Maybe, I don't know, we need to send a team down there or something, somehow or another. But it needs people to go. If future plans, if I was to, we need people. We need people to step out of their comfort bubble and go, and not just go for a weekend or even a week. We need people to pack up their lives and follow the call of the Lord to go to other locations. So future plans, I'd like to somehow encourage, particularly younger people. You don't have to be young to go out, but we have a lot of aging pastors like myself heading up towards the 70 years old, coming up in a little while yet, but we need younger people to step up. So somehow or another, I'd like to see us Home Missions encourage those young people to go out on the Elisha program, the Invigorate program, and get their hands dirty, as it were, in the work, and step out in faith, and get out of the comfort bubble, as I like to say.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, because you can have all the programs there, but if people aren't willing to take a step of faith, then can't do much beyond that. All right, so would you mind giving us, we like to finish up these episodes by giving the director, whoever we have on the podcast, a parting word or a final word. Would you mind leaving us with a word, Brother Morris? Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, well, my first thought is just keep on going. Whatever your hand finds to do it unto the Lord, but just keep on going. Don't give up, even when things seem like they're going against you in all quarters. Every corner you turn, the sense of problem. Don't give up. And one of the when I was in Sunraysia last weekend, one of the leaders from the pulpit, he announced my wife and I, some of the elders in the church, and we were the oldest people in the room at the time. Age sort of suddenly struck me, and when I got to the pulpit to take the mic, I said, well, I was just called an elder of the church, and there are two ways to become an elder in the church. One is to not give up, just to keep going, and the other thing is to avoid dying, but of course that's in the hands of the Lord. But my advice is never give up, just keep going. It's he that endures to the end shall be saved. We have a task in front of us which is bigger than any of us, and if we all do our small part, if we all do something together, just a small part, it builds up and creates an environment of change, and people can come to know the Lord, and their lives can be turned around and changed, and our nation can be changed. Amen.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the UPCA podcast. Make sure to follow the podcast wherever you listen to it, so every episode appears in your podcast feed. You also might want to check out the UPCA YouTube channel. where you are able to watch the conversation. God bless you as we reach Australia together.